Hello everybody and welcome to my weekly countdown of the top 10 selling light novels in Japan. This covering the weeks of September 4th to 10th. A lot of new titles on the list this week. In fact, last week there was a pretty big upheaval. Only 4 titles remained. This week, only 1 title from last week's top 10 is still on this list. And quite a number of titles that are not available in any way in English on the list this week. So some new stuff to check out if you're not familiar with what's going on in Japan light novel wise. So let's get started. We're going to start with number 10 on the list with 4,827 copies sold. And that is volume number 16 of 100 Nen no Himitsu, Oushuu Youitan. Now, I have no idea what this book is about. I went through all my usual channels to try and figure out what this was about. It seems to me like this is a shoujo type series. I think they tell a different story each volume, and I don't know if the characters carry over or if it's just telling different stories with those characters. Just the rough translations that I got off of Google, every volume seemed to be saying, oh, it's a brand new story. So I'm not too sure what this one's all about, but just based on the artwork and what rough descriptions I got, it strikes me that it could be maybe even a little bit on the yaoi side. So I'm not too sure. If you're familiar with this series, feel free to leave that in the comments down below. At number 9, with 5,519 copies sold, it is the single and sole remaining title, and that is volume 23 of Mahouka Koukou no Rettousei, or the Irregular at Magic High School. So again, has had a couple of very strong weeks on the top 10, now starting to fall off with new month, whole ton of brand new releases. So yeah, but I mean, still hanging on there in the number 9 spot. Of course, with the Irregular, as I've said the last couple of weeks on the list, or, you know, if you're new here, we do have both the manga, the light novel, and the anime all available in English from various sources. Yen Press is releasing the manga, then under their imprint of Yen On, they're releasing the light novels, and you can watch the anime on Crunchyroll. So we have everything pretty much covered there. In the number 8 spot, we have a brand new volume number 1 with 5,600 copies sold. I'm not even going to attempt the Japanese title because it's huge, but it's known as I Hate Being in Pain, so I think I'll make a full defensive build. No English license, of course. I mean, it's brand new. There's really nothing but this light novel, and it hasn't really proven itself sales-wise in Japan over any length of time to get an English license. So, what is it about? Honjo Keida was invited by her friend Shiromine Risa to play a VR MMO. I don't hate games, but painful things are a little... No, I hate it very, very much. Eh? The pain would be reduced if I placed stats on defense power? Then the only place where I can place it is there, right? Right? So solidly fortify everything into defense. Now here I come. So this one, of course, it's a VR MMO based light novel. Seems to be a female protagonist just based on the artwork, who I guess throws everything into defense to become the ultimate tank, mainly just because she hates pain. I'm not too sure exactly what's going to be done that's really original or different with this one from the truckload of other VR MMO type light novels, but obviously there's a little bit of hype for this title because it's right there at number 8 on its first week of release. At number 7, with 6,236 copies sold, we have Honzuki no Gekokujou. And then I guess the subtitle of this particular volume, it's Part 3, Volume 5, and it is also known as Ascendance of a Bookworm. Now this one has no English license, and I couldn't see, like, there's no anime and there's no manga based on it. Story-wise, Urano, a bookworm who had finally found a job as a librarian at a university, was sadly killed shortly after graduating from college. She was reborn as the daughter of a soldier in a world where the literacy rate is low and books were scarce. No matter how much she wanted to read, there were no books around. What is a bookworm to do without any books? Well, make them, of course. Her goal is to become a librarian. So that she may once again live surrounded by books, she must start by making them herself. So it's an isekai, it's a reborn into another world form of isekai, not just a summoned type story. I'm curious about it though. I mean, being a book lover and a reader and everything else, it would be kind of interesting to see just how literature and everything else would play out in this series. Like I just read Volume 1 of Book Girl, posted the review on here a little while ago. And again, that was a series about a girl who eats stories. She's a sort of goblin demon type thing. But because there was such a focus on stories in the written word, there were a lot of literature references and everything else. It was very, very interesting to me as a reader, and to see how a story could be built over and around a particular novel. So I kind of wonder if this is the same thing, although obviously I don't know for sure because we have absolutely zero on it when it comes to English. At number 6, with 6,931 volumes sold, we have volume number 9 of Legend. And it's just called Legend. Somebody's taking pity on this poor, I can't pronounce Japanese to save my life boy. This one is about Reijou Saeki, who lives in the northeastern countryside town, lost his life in an accident during summer vacation. But before he knew it, a mysterious ball of light hovered in front of his eyes in a world of whiteness. That ball of light was a magician from a parallel world, and is looking for a person qualified to inherit the magic he had created to prevent it from being lost. Reijou, who rode on that suggestion, now lives in the parallel world Elgin with a new body and powerful magical power. Again, no English license for this series. Yeah, like I said, a lot of volumes on here this week which are Japanese only. Although I'm kind of surprised I haven't heard more about this series. I mean, volume 9 and it's number 6 with its first week of release at the 9th volume. You'd think there maybe be a bit more talk about these kind of series, but again, you know, I get the sense from talking to some of you that the English market's already starting to burn out on the whole isekai, whereas you can tell that in Japan it's still really, really popular. I don't know if that's maybe because a lot of series came out in Japan and people got hooked on those series, and because of release dates in Japan, it didn't seem like everything was flooding into the market at once as isekais, whereas in English, because isekais are selling so well in Japan, I think those are the type of titles a lot of English publishers are throwing their money behind and taking a chance on. So it seems like the vast majority of stuff that we get released here are isekai. I mean, I still like a lot of isekai titles, but I guess maybe it's just different ways that things are released and so forth. I kind of wonder if maybe that's part of the reason, or maybe just North Americans really do have a shorter attention span and we're just done, been there, done that. Let's move on. Anyway, moving on to number 5 on the list, this time with 7,445 copies sold. It is volume number 5 of Koushaku Reijou no Tashinami, or it roughly translates as Common Sense of a Duke's Daughter. It is available as a light novel, and there is a manga adaptation of the light novel, neither of which are available in English. I was reincarnated as the villain character of an otome game, the daughter of a duke. However, when I regained my memory, I had already reached my, quote, ending. My engagement had been cancelled, and if things go according to its course, it was set that I will be imprisoned by the church. Where is my bright future? Again, it's like a different take on the whole video game thing. And, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it could be interesting. But again, like, this is all depending on how this stuff is written. But again, like the whole isekai thing, or into a video game world, or all that kind of stuff, or video game mechanics and worlds, I still think a lot of it can be really good, but it all depends on the story and how it develops. I mean, ReZero, for instance, with Subaru being summoned away to another world, I mean, the way that story has progressed and been told, it doesn't matter whether it's an isekai or not. It's just a very, very well done fantasy series. At number 4, with 8,882 copies sold, Volume 2 of Seijo no Marioku wa Bano Desu, or roughly, The Power of the Saint is All Around. Again, no English license for this one. Sei, a 20-year-old office worker, was summoned to a different world after finishing some overtime work, but the person who had summoned her looked at her face and said, "This is not the face of a saint. Is this neglect play?" Sei left the royal palace and concealed her saint title. She started working at a laboratory where she made potions and cosmetics. She used her magic to grant people's requests, and slowly people began suspecting that she was a saint. Can Sei enjoy her slow, dreamy, different world life without her saint title being found out? So again, this is like one of those other books where it's like the worker who's worked themselves almost literally to death or so forth gets summoned to another world. Death March to Parallel World Rhapsody features a character like that. Even Overlord, I mean, it's not so much that he dies because of overwork or whatever, but even that, he is a salaryman who gets summoned to another world. I found, like, with Overlord in particular, that it really was kind of interesting now, maybe because I'm a bit older, but it was kind of cool to me to read a slightly older character and to see how he was applying business principles to running sort of a fantastical, like, dungeon full of monsters. So I find that this seems to be a bit of a niche thing, that there are a number of them out there in Japan. Like 2 weeks ago, we just had that one with the 40-year-old who was summoned to another world, who had been laid off from his job. You know, there seems to be a subgenre of isekai that it involves adults being summoned to another world. And it's funny how a lot of them, it's like they are really hard workers and work themselves, in some cases, literally to death. And then the book is actually about them being so powerful and useful in this new world, but trying so desperately just to have a relaxed kind of life. I find it really interesting and kind of funny. And I'm not too sure what that says about Japanese culture or Japanese ideals about what kind of life a person should pursue or what they should do with their talents. I don't know. But I find it really interesting. And I find it interesting the vast majority of these ones with older characters seem to kind of fit that pattern. In the number 3 spot, with 9,491 copies sold, we have Volume 14 of Heavy Object. Again, no license for the light novels. There is a 24-episode anime which was licensed in English by Funimation and covered, based on my research online, covered about the first 3 volumes of the light novels, although I believe somebody had said that the way it ends at the end of the 24 episodes, like the last 1 or 2 episodes, were original to the anime. I'm guessing probably just to kind of tie it up, because the series clearly goes on for a lot longer beyond just the first 3 volumes. So this one, the story goes, in the future, the development of massive war machines called objects have rendered conventional warfare and even tactical nuclear weapons seemingly obsolete. As a consequence of this military upheaval, all of the nations of the world have fractured into 4 coalitions which constantly wage war on each other. The legitimate kingdom, focused on tradition, the capitalist corporation, which values profit, the information alliance, focused on knowledge, and the faith organization, which values religion above everything else. With the perception that only objects can destroy objects, modern warfare is reduced to duels between objects, resulting in shorter, cleaner, and safer wars. However, this all changes when 2 regular soldiers from the legitimate kingdom, Owenthur Barbotage and Havia Winchell, use their smarts and ingenuity to destroy the Water Strider object of the Faith organization all by themselves. Having proven that objects created by man can also be destroyed by man, Wenther and Havia are thrown into a new world of harrowing adventures and dangerous suicide-type missions, while together with Wenther befriending and saving the legitimate kingdom's elite Melinda Brantini of the object, the Baby Magnum. Now, this is actually a series that a number of times I have put in requests that I would like to have brought over. I haven't watched the anime, like I'm not really familiar with the story per se, but I am a big fan of like mecha and sort of futuristic type warfare and really wanting something different in terms of light novels beyond fantasy, isekai, even we're getting a little bit more slice of life, which is fantastic, but even something completely different. Like, we really don't have much in the way of science fiction. And I would love to see a couple of light novel series that feature science fiction. I'll read anything that they license if it has giant robots in it. Honestly. Don't care whether it's isekai, slice of life, future, whatever. If it's got big robots, I'm there. At number 2, with 9,515 copies sold, we have volume number 3 of Shinsetsu Okami to Koshi ni Ryu. This is the sequel to Spice and Wolf, known English-wise as Wolf and Parchment. It has been licensed for English release by Yen On, and actually the first volume's coming out November 14th of 2017, so not too long from now. This series is about the young man Cole dreams of one day joining the holy clergy and departs on a journey from the bathhouse, the Spice and Wolf Inn, owned by his savior Lawrence. The Winfiel Kingdom's prince has invited him to help correct the sins of the church. But as his travels begin, Cole discovers in his luggage a young girl with a wolf's ears and tail named Mayuri, who's stowed away for the ride. In the past, Cole had accompanied the wise wolf Holo and the traveling merchant Lawrence on their own wanderings, eventually growing up alongside their daughter, Mayuri, as siblings. But as Cole prepared to set off, Mayuri opposed his departure, and so she secretly ran away from home to join him. This is the story of Wolf and Parchment and the pair's travels that will someday change the world. Now, I only read the first volume of Spice and Wolf, and it's one of those series that I keep thinking to myself that I would like to get back into, but as I continue to push myself to keep up with all the new stuff that keeps coming out, it keeps getting pushed onto the back burner. It is kind of a cool series, though. I mean, it's a obviously sort of fantasy, fairy tale-ish type story, but it focused very heavily on economics and on business practices, which was quite a different take of the usual light novel. I'm not too sure how this one's going to go. I'm not sure if that's sort of going to be the focus of this story. It almost sounds like it's going to be a little more broad and large in its scope. I know Lawrence and Holo initially in that series, at least in the first book I read, I mean, their big mission was just to have their own business and open their own storefronts, so Lawrence didn't have to keep traveling from town to town. This one sounds like there's bigger aspirations going on in this story. Finally, at number 1, and if you knew it was coming out this week, you are not surprised that it's in the number 1 spot. 88,376 copies sold. It's volume 20 of Sword Art Online. Now, of course, we have a lot of Sword Art stuff in English. Yen On has licensed the light novels. They've also licensed the Sword Art Online progressive novels, which are the retelling of the Aincrad sort of section of that story. We also have the manga being released by not Yen On, but their parent, Yen Press. And of course, we have multiple episodes of anime that currently the TV series covers up to volume number 7, which is the Mother's Rosario story. And then we just recently had the theatrical film that was released that's supposed to be set between Mother's Rosario and the Alicization arc, which is the arc we're currently in right now. Now, we have volume 11, of course, just released, and it's sitting on my shelf to be read and reviewed. So this is volume 20. Now, interestingly enough, this is the end of what Reki Kawahara has posted as part of the Sword Art Online web novel. This is the end of the material. It is a part 2 of a 2-part, obviously, side story. And it's a side story that is set during the Alicization arc. So it's not even like it's a continuation of the ongoing Sword Art story. It's actually a side story set within the arc that's already over. And yet still managed to sell almost 89,000 copies. This series is a beast. I took a look, even with the Irregular Magic High School posting very similar numbers, Sword Art Online still in its first week beat that one out by a couple hundred copies. It'll be interesting to see how long it stays in this top 10 and how many copies it continues to sell. But on top of this, there was recently a statement that basically hinted that Kawahara was working on new Sword Art Online material. Now, I don't know if that means new as in going to be like a volume 21, like a new story arc that progresses above and beyond what existed in the web novels, or whether this is Kawahara actually going to start dedicating some honest to God time to progressive so that series can actually get done, because 74 floors with only 1 to 2 floors per volume, and we only have, is it 4 now? Maybe 4 or 5. So yeah, we've only covered like 8 to 10 floors. Like, this series is going to go on forever unless he picks up the pace on that. So in a way, I'm almost hoping that Sword Art Online is done with the end of Alicization in this side story, and that we're just going to get progressive from here on out. But we will see. We will see. I kind of have a feeling that he's going to continue the Sword Art story beyond Alicization, but only time will tell. Probably won't know until sometime early next year. So those are the top 10 best-selling light novel volumes in Japan for the week of September 4th to 10th. Like I said, a whole bunch of new titles on the list this week. So don't forget to join me next Saturday when I will do this all over again, and we'll see how many of these titles manage to hang on to a spot in the top 10. We'll see just how far all of a sudden Sword Art falls, if it does fall. Be interesting to see. So if you love light novels, you should consider subscribing. I review 2 to 3 volumes of light novels every single week, as well as doing this weekly countdown of the top 10 light novels in Japan. Thank you all for joining me in this video, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.